welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your resident idiot, Michael, and I want to thank you guys for enduring the studio edition of What's in the Box. And it could have kind of gone like that episode that shall not be named, but it didn't. You guys surprised me and showed up and kind of enjoyed it, it seemed like. So maybe we'll do more of those in the future. Who knows? But today is all about these. We are doing a full and complete sound check on the Focal Utopia headphone, and that will be coming up. But first, I have a couple of updates. I want to call your attention down to the comments below, and you'll see there's a new section down there called the Director's Garage Sale. It's work in progress. But what's in there is some gear that I'm getting rid of. And if you guys are interested and you want to get a deal on something, take a look down there. I'm selling stuff. And as this channel grows, the intent is I will be discounting that stuff more and more because we'll be getting some income coming in. I want to pay it forward. But as of now, the channel, stand back everybody, has made a total of 40 cents. 40 cents. Two people clicked on the Amazon link and bought the Smitty's glass wax, which is like a $9 thing, and I got like 20 cents for two purchases. 40 cents, folks. So we're on our way. Boogers. Now, how much have we lost on the Director's Garage? I think you can do the math of all these What's in the Boxes and figure that out for yourself. It's not pretty. Now, today we are debuting another new feature I am calling Headlines. The Headlines, headphone. This is basically news and things that I run across that I think are interesting or maybe you want to know about. We are about 2 times a week when I'm regularly posting, so you can stay up to date on things, so why not? First, Campfire Audio announced 2 new headphones. One called the Vega, which has a 10mm dynamic driver, and it will retail for about $900. And then they released a second one called the Dorado. Potato. It has the same 10mm dynamic driver, but adds a balanced armature to the mix. And that one, they've tuned deeper. It has a little more bass in it, and it will retail for about $1,100. Also, Fostex released a pearl white edition of its TH900 Mark II, one of my favorite headphones ever. Fantastic headphone. They gave it a little bit of a tuning update, and that's retailing for about $1,700. The Tia Fourte, a 64 audio headphone, and the winner of the very first Director's Garage Shootout, went on sale on drop.com. You can now pick them up for $26.99, a $900 price drop. Check those out. And one note in music news, Adele is going to host SNL this weekend. Any of you wondering if she's going to debut any new tracks off of that mystery album that's been rumored for the last year? It doesn't look likely. The musical guest is H.E.R or H.E.R. So whatever you call the name, I don't think we're going to be hearing Adele. And those are your headline stories for today. Hope you like that. So now let's roll into the sound check for the Focal Utopia. And this is something that I have really been looking forward to because everything I do with this headphone moves me one step closer to the Battle of the Titans. Could this get any more ridiculous? All right, let's start with ergonomics. And the clamp on these headphones is really nice. It's a little bit tight maybe, but I have a large noggin and frankly, it doesn't bother me. I listened for hours on end, checking out tracks and stuff, and they never really got in the way or bugged me or anything. For the price point that they fall into, these things are relatively light, and they're, it's got carbon fiber construction on them, things to keep the headphone light, and it really shows. One thing I would notice though, listen to that.
You don't see that every day.
They creak a little. Creaky. And it's not anything that really I would give it a knock for or take points away for. It's just something I noticed. It does that. And let's talk briefly about the cable. I know I talked about it in the unboxing, but one thing I would note is this thing is tremendously long. It's like 8 feet, which normally I would say is, ridiculous. But because my amp is on the other side of the room, I actually need a longer cable. And I would say it's also very durable. This is a construction similar to what I would expect in a microphone cable, and I feel like I could roll over it with my chair and it's not going to cause it any harm. Go. Now moving into the sound end of things, let's talk about files. This headphone is so revealing and so detailed. When you throw a bad file at it, you're going to hear it. It is a garbage in, garbage out headphone. You're not going to be able to play iTunes songs on this and think that it's going to not sound like bad iTunes songs. You really need to throw high quality files at it to get these headphones up on their skis. But when you talk about hardware sources, this headphone could play with pretty much anything. I had this thing hooked up to the SP1000, the KNN8, the Hugo 2, the Hugo TT, and of course, it sounded best on the Woo Audio WA5 LE. That's a mouthful.
That sounds sweet!
But it really sounded good no matter what I plugged them into, and that's really a testament to a fine headphone that's very efficient. This thing sounded great no matter what. So now let's start breaking down the sound, and I want to start with soundstage. The soundstage on this headphone rivals the very best headphones I've ever heard. It is as wide, if not wider, than the HD800. It's that spectacular. The space, the sound goes out forever, and some stuff comes in, it sounds like it's coming from the far, far reaches of the room, and then you'll have other things that are intimate and real close to your ears. This headphone does soundstage as good, if not better, than anything I've ever heard. And the imaging is equally spectacular. I don't think there's many that can run in this race. Maybe the Sysvara or an Electrostat or something like that, but within the soundstage, that pinpoint of sound where it's coming from, this thing images like very few headphones.
Nice.
Looking at dynamics, this headphone is capable of terrific surprises. It may not have the widest dynamic range of any headphone I've ever heard, but it's up there. These sound terrific.
It's a miracle.
And moving on to detail, your ability to pull those little nuances out of the mix, those Easter eggs that you hear that engineers sometimes bury, this headphone keeps you searching from track to track to hear more of those things. I just love doing that. You know, God, there was a synthesizer in this thing, and this little trill that I heard that I hadn't heard before. That's what this headphone is about. I can't think of a headphone that would run with the detail of this. You're going to have to go to the very, very most elite planar dynamic headphone or the Stax and the electrostatics. But at any rate, there's very little that's going to compare to the detail on these. So now let's talk about sound structure. And when I talk about sound structure, I'm referring to the core of the sound, which is the bass, the treble, the mid-range. And starting with the bass, God, I love the bass on this headphone. It's super deep. It's super detailed. It extends way down low. It thumps in the back of your head. It's got everything I want in a bass headphone. The only headphone, if I was going to A/B it, I would want to hear the Abyss against it, or maybe the LCD4, because those are bass head headphones. But this bass is right in the pocket of what I want in a headphone. It's deep, it's fast, it's extended, it's just super full range. It's everything you want. Moving on to the mid-range, I would say that the mid-range on this headphone is a tiny bit recessed, which is exactly kind of where I prefer my tuning, and that's why I enjoyed my time with these so much this past week. Everything about this headphone sort of fell into that pocket of where I want to hear things. And the mid-range on this is really fast, and what I always worry about when we talk mid-range is that you're going to get this, the instruments are going to kind of glob up in the middle, and things have a hard time separating and they sound congested. Never the case with the Utopia. So you know how the last couple of reviews I've done have been sort of with darker headphones and headphones that are a little bit on the dark side? Well, the Utopia is like bringing the light. And when we're talking about the treble on this headphone, I would say that the treble is almost like, if there's an Achilles heel with the Utopia, it's in the treble, because it sort of walks right up to that line of harshness. And I don't think it goes over, but boy, it dances right on that jagged edge.
Ouch.
But then again, we're talking about one of the most beautifully detailed headphones I've ever heard. And to get that detail, you've got to walk up to that line of going harsh. And that's always the struggle when you're tuning the treble for headphones, is you want to get as much clarity into your ears as possible, but you don't want to step over that line and go into harshness. But with the great, insane detail of this headphone and the treble and how much sparkle there is, and it's so beautiful, I think that if you pulled it back, you would actually hurt the headphone. So it's just, every now and then you just get a note here and there where it just pushes that harshness button a touch. And if I was going to say that there's a weakness on this headphone, I would say it's in the treble. Which makes me really wonder, when we get to the shootout with the ZMF, the treble is the area I'm going to be hyper-focused on, because the ZMF, I think, stays well inside that edge, that limit between the harshness and the detail. and the Utopia pushes that edge as far as it can. So that's going to be the biggest contrast, I think, when we get into this shootout. Now, tracks. You know I love to talk about music, and I have some music on this headphone that really shined. Supertramp, Crime of the Century. There's a 192 kilohertz version of this that will push any headphone to its absolute limit. If you want to test your headphone, pick up a copy of Crime of the Century, and it will tell you everything you need to know about your headphone. And this headphone passed the Crime of the Century test magnificently. In fact, it was probably the best experience I've ever had with that album. School, Bloody Well Right, Dreamer, these tracks have supreme detail, supreme clarity, super wide open soundscapes that crush in for a second and then expand back out again. It's got amazing dynamics, super low bass, super high treble. It's one of the best plays I can remember. Pink Floyd, The Wall, and I want to call your attention to Goodbye Blue Sky. There's a large-bodied acoustic guitar part that's fantastic, and then underneath that, there's a heavy bassy synthesizer part, and then they layer on top of that the harmonies and on each side of the mix, left and right channel. This is a fantastic experience on the headphone, and thematically, I know the album is really dark and whatever, but the soundscapes that Pink Floyd created on this record are fantastic, really shined on the Utopia. The Doors, An LA Woman, and its natural acoustics. There's a texture to the sound and to the reverb of that track that is just amazing. It creates a soundscape and a picture for you like you're driving down an LA freeway and there's fog rolling in and it's dark at night and you're driving super fast, and that's really accentuated by the detail that the headphone can reproduce. It's an extraordinary experience. And then when they get to the breakdown section and things kind of open up a little bit and you've got Robbie Krieger playing the guitar and then Ray is sort of hitting a couple of little notes on the keyboard off in the distance. And this headphone really gives you a magnificent experience when you're listening to that track. Bob Dylan and Blood on the Tracks, Tangled Up in Blue. The drums are super light on this track, and I love the way they dance across the mix. They're very much on the surface, but there's also a lot of echo in that track. And then you have 3 acoustic guitars by my count, and the ability of this headphone to keep the detail in the mids with 3 acoustic guitars playing in the exact same frequency range, that tells you a lot about how greatly detailed this headphone is and how fast this headphone is. Now, of course, I'm going to make my obscure recommendation, and for that, it's going to be Box of Frogs. What the hell is a Box of Frogs? It's a group from the mid-'80s of some former Yardbirds that got together. Jeff Beck sat in on a couple of sessions, and they did this Eponymous album that's absolutely fantastic. There's a Robert Plant-like distorted harmonica on these tracks. Check out that record if you like classic rock. It's kind of part Stones, it's kind of part Bad Company. Super great vibe. It's a fantastic listen. And then you know I love my Grateful Dead, and I'm going to throw at you Uncle John's Band off of Working Man's Dead. This track is fantastic. If you can find the 2496 version of it, that was a remix where they kind of expanded the sound out. Somebody did like a version on acid as maybe only you should listen to the Dead.
Munching Munchkins.
But I love this mix, and Uncle John's Band, in this case, there's a thumping bass down below, and then this delicate, of course, and you get the harmonies going at the same time. Fantastic listen, and the Utopia doesn't let you down. And then I've got one jazz recommendation, Bill Evans Trio, Sunday at the Village Vanguard. This is an album that was recorded literally in a club. Bill had a couple of albums, like Waltz for Debbie was also recorded in a club. But, you know, when they do these recordings and you hear, like, you're sitting here and listen with your headphones on and you hear, like, drinks being clinked on the table next to you and a waiter coming around, and you'll hear, like, little snippets of a conversation that somebody's having on the table next to you. And then on top of it, you've got just 3 instruments playing in absolute perfect unison by absolute masters. This album is a spectacular listen on this headphone. With the sound stage the way it is, so wide, you are just sat in the middle of that smoky room. It's spectacular. So if I had to summarize the Focal Utopia in a word, I would use the word winning. The tuning on this headphone is spectacular. It's dynamite. I mean, I'm blown away by this headphone. there's very little to complain about. Like I said, you could maybe say that it pushes the edge in the treble, leading edge to harshness, but that's really kind of nitpicking. I mean, there's nothing significantly wrong with it. It's just something, no headphone is perfect, so that's what I would say. If there's an area of weakness, it's in the treble. But this is a track-seeking headphone. There's a tremendous wow factor in this headphone. I think it plays with any genre. Jazz, classical, rock. This thing crosses almost any genre, and it challenged me to find something that it couldn't play well, and I've yet to find something. So thanks for joining me today for the sound check of the Focal Utopia. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. I super enjoyed spending my time with these this week. I listened to a lot of tracks, demoed a lot of stuff, and I'm a much better person for it.
Thank you.
Am I? I don't know. But make sure you like and subscribe, because the subscriptions are the key to us getting more crazy shit like this in here, and I love getting crazy shit in here. Now, don't forget, I have 2 manufacturers that are on board. They're going to be sending us stuff in the coming weeks. And then I've got a budget headphone as soon as it gets here. I'll be doing an unboxing of that, something that anybody can afford, thank God, because these things are making me go broke.
Hey!
And then, yes, we have the Blast of the Titans. Oh, got carried away there. But the loser of that battle is likely getting listed, so I'm gonna walk the walk with that one, I believe. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Always a pleasure to see your faces. Please come back, and I'll be back with you before you know it.